Welcome, welcome, welcome to the SAS Viya Release Highlight Show. I'm your host, Anna Brown, and I can't wait to get into the very first show of 2022. What? Oh, we have a very special guest for you today. I'll be joined later on by Bryan Harris, Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at SAS, and he'll give us his thoughts on trends to watch in the AI and analytics space. Can't wait to get to that. We'll also talk about product updates from version 2021.2.2, things like a new SAS Studio engineer step for integrating published decisions. And we'll also take a look at how you can now have access to all data sets and the Bureau of Economics Analysis website within SAS Econometrics. Say that 10 times fast. Before we do get to those product updates, I'd like to remind everybody who's joining us here today to chat it up in the discussion, either on the live chat on YouTube or in the discussion on the LinkedIn Live post. Tell us what you think. And you know what? I'll kick off the conversation and give you a question of my own. What's your prediction for trends to watch in the AI and analytics space for the year ahead? Can't wait to hear what you think. And now I'll introduce the rundown.
Welcome to SAS Studio Release 2021.2.2. In this release, we introduce the first SAS Studio engineer step, Execute Decisions, which allows you to integrate decisions published in CAS from SAS Intelligent Decisioning. Also in this release, the ability to take CAS tables and promote and persist them, as well as provide advanced dataset options to your output datasets. And finally, new to the migration for SAS Enterprise Guide users, the ability to take a SAS Enterprise Guide project containing an import step for a CSV or Excel file, bring it into SAS Studio, and have it converted into an import step in SAS Studio.
Hey everyone, it's Gunja here. I'm very excited to introduce to you a new data interface engine that is coming up in the latest release, 2021.2.2 of SAS Econometrics. The new SAS EVA interface engine provides seamless access to all 12 datasets in the Economic Statistics website of the US Bureau of Economic Analysis, or BEA. As you know, the BEA produces some of the world's most closely watched statistics, including the US gross domestic product, better known as GDP. Whether you're interested in industry, national, international, or regional statistics, the BEA has significant historical and current time series data for you. You can benefit from the easy access that SAS EVA provides for you to this vast resource. Say you'd like to retrieve auto and truck detail data from the National Income and Product Account, or NIPA, underlying detailed dataset. The request is for monthly data for the years 2015 and 16. Here you specify which dataset you are requesting, which is the time series for truck and auto unit sales, production, inventories, expenditures, and price. You do need an API key, which you can easily obtain from the BEA's website. When all the data are retrieved, they are placed in the SAS dataset that you named. It is located in the library and the physical path that you specify in the libname statement. Now let's take a look. Here's your dataset. Now you're ready to explore.
Thank you, Amy and Gunche. Great updates. Listen, if you're interested in that new interface engine within SAS Econometrics, it's a great blog post to check out. We dropped it in the chat so you can read about more details there. All right, so I posted a poll actually a couple of days ago on LinkedIn asking you at large collectively what number one AI technology you were looking or thinking would be a top trend this year. And the number one ranking in terms of the results in the poll was the metaverse. I never thought that I would be saying that here, but that's seems to be a pretty popular trend people are talking about. We'll see if our guest speaker has anything to say about that in the Release Talk Executive Edition. Today, I am joined by a super special guest, Bryan Harris, Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at SAS. He'll tell us about his thoughts on trends for the year ahead. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Anna, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I watch every episode, and I'm so excited for us to be able to catch up and talk about all the exciting things that are coming out in 2022.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, I know it's really hard for any of us to bank on anything that's going to happen in the year ahead, especially given the global punch we had in 2020. But if you had to pick a couple of things to watch out for, what would they be for 2022?
Well, you only thought you had one punch in 2020. I think we had about 3 or 4 of them, just to go on the record. I think, well, number one, I think is we're kind of all dealing as a society with a new level of disruption, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. And I think from that perspective, it's really driving a vision for me at SAS around productivity. I want us to be the most productive analytics company in the market to ensure that our customers can really navigate a lot of this disruption. You know, as these rare events occur, uh, society is kind of changing values and habits very, very quickly, which means companies have to reorient themselves to what is the new normal. And so I'm thinking about ways around analytically, how do we start asking the questions of what if? How can we help customers anticipate? And that's incredibly important when the past is not a predictor of the future. So we need to kind of help our customers prepare for those scenarios. And that's one of the areas I'm focusing on in the company from an analytics perspective. And really, when I think about that, the goal of analytics, machine learning, and AI is really around how do we scale human observation and decision making. And I think when you see what I'm going to talk about in these emerging trends, there's 3 areas where people are really focused on right now around where analytics, machine learning, and AI are going to have a huge role to play. Number one, emerging markets. And I'll talk about these in a second. Second is dealing with disruption. I don't think this is ending. I think it's a new normal, and we're going to have to figure out ways to navigate it. And the third is responsible innovation. So let me first start off with emerging markets. There is a huge analytics service emerging for these emerging areas like esports, cryptocurrency, supply chain resiliency, sustainability, and yes, even the metaverse. When we talk about these things, you got to think about some of the things that's happening, and the convergence of these is what's really, really fascinating. Take esports, for instance. I have a 15-year-old son who's playing Valorant, Call of Duty, Fortnite, and each of these games, there is a massive amount of analytics that are required to find players to match each other, to find parity of who's playing who. There is analytics inside each of these universes where you have inventory that you can buy. And think about the recommendation engines that are happening inside of these gaming worlds. And what's going to happen is the convergence of the gaming world with cryptocurrency, with non-fungible tokens. Imagine now a skin or a inventory in a game is guaranteed to be unique, right? And when you do that, all of a sudden you're opening up a new economy in the digital space that is going to be a massive opportunity. And that is why so many companies are talking about this. But I also think that same, the gaming world and cryptocurrencies converging is kind of part of the larger trend of what we are talking about, this metaverse, which is that you're really going to see worlds emerge where a game is part of a larger community, part of a larger ecosystem. And that ecosystem could be also bleed into the business side. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. What is the metaverse version or the version of metaverse for business that's going to happen? And what are the analytic opportunities, or what are the opportunities for AI machine learning to help our customers navigate through that? So very, very excited about that. Another area for me, though, is simulation. I think this is going to be the year where simulation starts to become a very, very targeted discussion by many in the C-level as well as the board. Because what's happening is if we have these rare events that are causing disruption, that means the past for analytics is not typically a high probability predictor of the future. That means we have to start thinking about how do we introduce rare events into our modeling and simulation so that we can understand what are the highest probabilities of outcomes when the past is not a predictor of the future. And we can start doing that in many, many ways in many, many industries. And you'll hear that a lot about me as I talk about a lot about that when I talk about that later. So an example for that in the COVID side is we're all sitting here chasing this variant, right? We got a variant, we had Delta, we had the Alpha, we had Delta, we have Omicron. And we're all trying to figure out, well, what happens if we have a new variant? So what if we could start to simulate variations of the virus in ways that we could get a higher predictable outcome of where the variant could go? then we could start to put therapeutics and other types of drugs that can adapt to that and start to snuff this out so we can all get back to normal and go to restaurants and bars without a mask and enjoy our life that we all want to get back to. Second, dealing with the disruption. So again, when you're talking about disruption, it is about these rare events. It could be climate change events like we've seen with tornadoes, we've seen with just recently the volcano out in Tonga. I mean, these are big, big events that can disrupt economies. So we have to start understanding how do we know and understand the parts of our business and ways that we can simulate these activities such that when disruptive change happens, we can have higher confidence in the probable outcomes of the impacts of those change. That's really, really, really important. And when I'll give you some examples to kind of from the last 12 months to kind of really reconfirm this, which is that supply chains have been incredibly disruptive, right? If you look back, actually, the housing crisis in 2008 and 9, we had a systemic shock to financial investments, right? The banking, the investment models were all kind of disrupted, right? We found out that people would rather pay their Netflix bill than they would their home mortgage, right? And people were struggling. And then what we have now is that in this world today, we have an actual supply chain issue that is really, really disruptive. Every business in the world today is trying to figure out how do we build out resiliency in their supply chain. And so that's a huge area of work there that we are actually investing heavily in. We'll talk about in a few minutes. COVID has, impacted risk management infrastructure. So banks are recalibrating all of their data and models because the stress tests have to be understood. What happens when people change behaviors and how does it affect money, spending habits, and saving habits? All of that needs to be factored in. Businesses are relying more on delivery services, and this has been highly disruptive and very much talked about in the food industry, which is that a lot of businesses were just pure brick and mortar. You had to go in and eat there only. They had to suddenly pivot to being a delivery service. That's a new normal now. That's now a new offering that every business is having, and companies out there are the delivery services that are filling in the gap to support that have disrupted businesses. So now what are the costs for food and supply costs and delivery costs? Those are all being disrupted. And those companies with strong analytic insights into those data, into the data, can actually make very, very quick decisions with confidence and create competitive advantages for them. And then lastly, hybrid work models. I mean, the fact that now the world has accepted that a lot of work can be done in a hybrid way has changed all kinds of demand for home office supplies, equipment, and even larger home investments. So these are just a few of the areas that have been highly disruptive. Now, this is new. Disruption is not new to 2022, but it's the rate and scale of these changes that is so jarring to the market. And businesses are quickly trying to reorient themselves using data and analytics, and the ones that can do this well are going to thrive. Now, the third, responsible innovation. This trend is really, really exciting because as a company that's been in this market for 45 years, we have so much experience in understanding how to deliver analytics responsibly to our customers. It is no longer a nice to have. This is an expectation of the market. And as analytics, machine learning, and AI become pervasive in society, automated decisions are being made on behalf of large communities. And when I meet with customers, proactively, customers are talking with me around this growing sense of responsibility to ensure that automated decisions are fair and explainable, right? That is so important. And I'm really, really excited about the innovations we're doing to kind of contribute to making sure our customers have this confidence in delivering innovation responsibly.
Well, I am certainly glad to hear that. I'm sure everybody is too, that you're hearing from companies far and wide that they are cognizant about being responsible with their innovation. And I recall quite a few features and functionality being built into, I think it was SAS Visual Data Mining and Machine Learning in recent releases within SAS Viya on things like model bias assessment and other bias conscious predictive modeling. Can you expand on how SAS Viya, or there are other ways SAS Viya is kind of evolving and innovating to meet these demands that you've just outlined?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I will those responses I'll put in the same categories I just mentioned around emerging markets, dealing with disruption, and then responsible innovation. So first of all, we are actively monitoring the emergence of how does fraud project itself into cryptocurrencies? How does the world of esports and the kind of social media world start to converge? And what are the analytic opportunities that are there to help really kind of the customers navigate data-rich environments that have significant upsides if you can identify trends and get ahead of trends and take a competitive advantage in the market. For the simulation side, we are actually focusing on reinforcement learning and other areas of simulation techniques that allow us to really understand ways to simulate multiple scenarios and what's the compute intensity required to do that. One of the areas that I'm super excited about in the area of research for us, everyone's seen these deep fake videos where people have faces that have been put on other famous people. And what we're doing is we've taken that technology, generative adversarial networks, and we transformed that technology to support simulation of structured tabular data. And what this means is, remember I talked about disruption earlier. If disruption means rare events are coming, then we need to kind of, in our analytic modeling, simulate more rare events so we can understand the potential outcomes of the impacts to a vertical or a business. And so our ability to use generative adversarial networks to essentially start to create simulated synthetic data that is going to be congruent with physical world events or items is, I think, a game-changing capability that we're working on and super excited about the progress we've made on it. So stay tuned on that. There will be a little more too on the esports side. I think we've got some exciting things to talk about that later in the year as well. Now, dealing with disruption. From a supply chain resiliency standpoint, we are partnering with C.H. Robinson, which is a leading global logistics company, to create a first of its kind offering. This is an end-to-end supply chain solution that actually integrates inventory, demand, and the transportation fleet management data all into one capability so that our customers can navigate disruption with regards to supply chain, weather events, or all the above. This will ultimately pave the way for our businesses really to make smarter and more timely, agile decisions in the markets for them. Very excited about that. That's all happening in 2022. From a risk management standpoint, we're helping banks modernize and automate their entire approach to risk calculations. This will enable them to be more agile as they see disruption in the financial worlds and how they can take positions that honestly can support both the banks, but also the economies. We all want our economies to grow and to be stable. When you have stable economies, you can invest. And so really having analytics that enable them to do that more fast, to understand the change that's happening in the financial markets, allows them to make better decisions on the investments they make and ultimately stabilize economies. From a health and life sciences perspective, right, we're doing some incredible work with the University of North Carolina to transform drug development processes. The FDA process, while we've done amazing things with the vaccines over the last 18 months, there's now a look to say, are there ways for us to find existing drugs that, if we can understand how they respond to different circumstances from the protein perspective, can we identify, kind of using clustering, drugs that already exist and have been FDA approved and find alternate uses for them so that we can be better prepared for the next potential variation or pandemic. And so I think we're really, really excited about that work. And it's an incredible insight we're already created with some of the analytics we've done with UNC there. And then from an operational perspective, we're going to continue to work with hospitals to help them predict admissions of patients in the ICU and impacts on the organization, from staffing the hospital wards to scheduling and managing COVID vaccine administration. There's a lot going on, and we're really focused on helping our customers manage the disruption. Now, from a responsible innovation perspective, I am so excited about the fact that we formalized a data ethics practice that reports directly to me. That's how important it is to me and the organization at SAS. This is about, when you put all of the technological innovations together, how do we make sure our customers are innovating responsibly? And so one of the areas we're doing here is to make sure that we can deploy data-driven systems to promote human well-being, agency, and equity. And SAS Viya currently supports several responsible AI capabilities, such as protected and sensitive data flagging, surrogate model interpretation, as well as lifecycle management. And we're assessing how we can bring our additional responsible AI capabilities already supported in many of our customer-coded solutions to the Viya platform. And we think of that from 3 Ps. The first being policy, the second being process, and the third being product. From a policy perspective, governments around the world are understanding the magnitude and the responsibility of what happens when analytics, machine learning, and AI are making decisions on behalf of communities. So those policies are being drafted. We have a team in the data ethics practice that's monitoring those policies, making sure we have an understanding of those policies. Second, in the process, we want to make sure that we are recommending best practices to our customers, as well as our enablement teams and technology teams, that we are conducting analytics, machine learning, and AI responsibly. So as we take the policy, we translate that into action in the processes that we're actually deploying throughout the world. And then lastly, which I think is really important as well, is when we see the process and we see repeatability in the process, we want to take the opportunity to convert that into product capabilities. So let's put some of those capabilities in the product that really enable us to scale responsible innovation without getting in the way of our customers' ability to deliver innovation. So really, really excited about how we're approaching the world on making sure that we can deliver technology that understands how responsible SAS as a vendor is in delivering responsible innovation.
That is so exciting to hear about the data ethics practice, and thank you for sharing that 3P framework that really makes sense to kind of be the underpinning for structure and setting that forward for this year. We hope to hear more about that on the show. So you have talked about a lot of broad strokes trends and gave us some great examples. But if you had one AI technology to watch this year, what would it be?
I think people need to really focus in on synthetic data. I think that the amount of disruption that we're going to continue to have is going to require us to rethink how we make discoveries from analytics. And a case in point here is, think about it this way. We hear a lot about autonomous vehicles, and we really, really need to be thinking about, like, if autonomous vehicles are driving on the streets and God forbid there's an accident that happens and someone's injured or killed, we do not want the rate of change of autonomous vehicle software to be as a function of how many people are injured and killed. That is irresponsible. That is what happens when you build bridges. When you build a bridge, there's, like, they say, like 2 to 5 people die during building a bridge. We shouldn't accept that as an answer. If we're building the analytics and the machine learning and AI for this, then we should find ways to simulate data in complex worlds so that we can have the confidence that when we put these automated capabilities in play, we're doing it responsibly. And that's what I'm talking about. And we need to do that. A big part of that capability is the ability to create synthetic data that's congruent with real world events and sensors. That's why I think it's so important. And I'll go in even further here. A lot of people are talking about the concept of the metaverse. I would like to basically say, I believe there is a concept of the multiverse that we need to talk about, which is, how do we think about disruption and what are the likely outcomes of disruption, which is that I could have 10 different outcomes. Well, based on the fact that, say, a supply chain is disrupted, or we have a climate change event that is really disruptive, what are the top 3 outcomes in that scenario that I can, as a business leader, owner, CEO, or board level, can say, we need to be prepared for these types of events. And if they happen, here's our action plan that we can be ready to hit the ground running when that occurs. That's where I'm thinking about this idea of simulation, is how do we allow people to see a bit into the future when we now believe that a lot of times the past is not always a predictor of the present or the near-term future.
Well, I am noting that in my head, the multiverse, for sure, is kind of being prepared for several different simulated versions of our multiple universes, our parallel universes. That is, so thank you for sharing
Well,
that. Let's
we got to be on
pretend
brand
that,
with Spider-Man. We got to be on brand with it.
yeah,
We're
oh,
going right
right,
with it.
of course. Let's pretend that your mother just called and
Okay. She's going to yell at
she
me.
had a lot to say to you.
Okay.
Maybe, maybe some good, maybe some bad, but the one thing she was interested in is what you're most excited about this year at work. What would you tell her?
I'd be so excited to tell her I can't wait to be back on campus at 2025. No, I mean, seriously. I mean, it feels like it's never going to happen, but we're getting there. Actually, we have a glimmer of hope. The Starbucks on our campus just opened up, so I've been firing up Americanos on a daily basis. So we're in good shape there. That's giving me some hope that we're going to move back towards normalcy. But in all seriousness, one of the big areas I'm looking forward to in 2022 for SAS is scalability as a function of cost. We are tracking lots of customers in our customer base, 17,000 customers, 83,000 sites deployed around the world. Many of them are processing terabytes, if not petabytes of data, and they're doing that, trying to access and make decisions on that data with hundreds, if not thousands of concurrent users. So our software has to address these needs at a reasonable price point, especially in the cloud. So I'm really excited about the innovative architectures we're building to significantly improve performance as a function of cost. And that, we believe, we're getting ahead of that for our customers so that we can also be a differentiated vendor where getting an answer to a very complicated question, not only is it more accurate, it's trusted, but it's also, we believe, price competitive for us.
Excellent. Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time and insight today, Brian. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure our viewers did. We can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you for having me, and I cannot wait to do this again. So let's not make it too long.
Okay, will do. All right. Well, we have lots to look forward to with SAS Viya in the year ahead. But before I let you go, I want to share something that's really cool that we're doing here at SAS. It's the SAS Hackathon. And if applying your data science skills to solve a real world global humanitarian crisis was on your to do resolution list this year, then you need to join a SAS hackathon team today. Registration's open, and you can find out all about what it entails by um, tuning into an upcoming webcast on January 26th, right here on YouTube, on the SAS Software YouTube channel, and on LinkedIn Live. Get the details, sign up. You can register as an individual or as a team, and we can't wait to hear your ideas. For more information, go to sas.com/hackathon. Okay, that does it for today, guys. We can't wait to come back at you in February. And the best way to find out about when that show will take place is to subscribe to the SAS Users YouTube channel. Until then, see you later.